What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Archill podcast. Today I'm joined with Dachi Choladze, amazing tech entrepreneur with an incredible startup story. We talked a lot about nitty-gritty details of starting a startup, all fresh from Dachi's personal experience, and that's why I'm extremely excited to share this episode with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about Archill podcast. And now, without further ado, here it is. My conversation with Dachi, co-founder of Pulsar AI. Enjoy. Many founders tell me they could not have done it alone. So how was it in your case?
I would say the same. I mean, uh, doing things alone isn't at least as fun as it could be together with some people in your team, regardless of what you're doing. So I think sharing all the ups and downs with some people who are committed to the same thing and who are basically feeling the same feelings during those ups and downs is pretty critical, and I think that everybody needs that kind of support in life in general, but also in the startup journey because it's a pretty good mirror of life in just a shorter period of time, together with all of its challenges and all of its successes and everything that you come across with along that journey. So I would completely agree to that.
Okay, awesome. So actually, like last year, I was working like at the same co-working where your team is located. And also I have like a couple of friends working with you. And one thing which I immediately noticed what was this like friendly and family-like environment you have in the team. Okay. And like I always wanted to ask personally to you, like, was this like something like done on purpose or it just happened? Because like I also have these ideas like big companies and people saying that like work is work and family is family. And how did you make all this work with such a friendly environment?
I would put this firstly into saying structure that I couldn't have done it otherwise, and I think we couldn't have done it otherwise. Just like talking about being alone or not on this journey. Um, I wouldn't say that we did it on purpose because it was. Uh, I mean, I had quite many attempts before, and my co-founders also had quite many attempts before, but this was the proper attempt, which basically worked and scaled and became a proper company. Uh, and I wouldn't say that I was bringing that thing or any of my co-founders were bringing that thing from their previous experiences. Um, it was just the way it was between us when we started, when we were just two people, and I guess when we were recruiting people, we were paying attention to that thing as well, but it was also natural. Like we were not thinking that, hey, like whomever we meet, they should be friendly and easygoing and motivated and so on. Like we were basically looking at more at their experiences and their knowledge and their expertise in some of the things that we uh, were looking for. But I guess the final yes or no would always depend on whether we liked them personally or not. So, uh, and as probably we saw that the attitude towards each other, which was friendly and pretty open, uh, I guess we were expecting the same thing from the other people. So when we were evaluating some candidates to join us, I guess we were taking that into consideration as well. But it was just going in the background, and it was just happening by default. It was not some criteria that we would check per each person. Uh, and the other thing is that, which I think probably could have played a role in this, is that we never really focused on hiring senior people. I mean, senior in terms of experience. Um, in the first place, it was because we couldn't afford to hire seniors, I guess. But at the same time, as we found out, like in the beginning, we had a couple senior people and a couple of others who for whom it was just like first job, but it it turned out that like in quite short time, it turned out that those people who were more motivated to prove themselves and to prove to us that they were good and they were not already having that label of senior or experienced or professional or something, those people would work much harder and would make things happen compared to senior people because there's nothing against senior people. They bring valuable experience and knowledge to the team. But at the same time, it sort of comes together with them. I would call it like framework or something that they are already trying to fit into based on their experience. Probably that's coming from a very successful experience that they have, and therefore it should work. But things change, and from team to team, cultures also change. So it's not that universal. And for those people, therefore, who were basically uh, just doing anything to make things work and just doing anything to prove that uh, they were in the right place from our perspective, uh, it turned out that those people were more open to also being very casual and being very direct and friendly because like when you hire someone junior and you trust them, it is a very good signal coming from you that you are you're basically giving them some sort of platform at your own risk to prove that they can do things and that they can grow. And when you have a startup of like 5, 7, 8 people and you are already holding something which should become your main value and you are putting that at risk by hiring someone and telling them that okay, you do this part, they that sort of can be converted into a friendly attitude because you trust someone and trust is a big part of friendship. And I guess as we could not afford, we were lucky not to be able to afford the senior people for whom it would not mean that much that we were trusting them compared to the junior people that we were hiring, and they were like uh, entry level engineers, for example. And as we were trusting them, they were paying it back by their trust in your goals, being comfortable in the situation where you pivot many times, where you have some ambiguity in the organization, and you sometimes don't really have a very clear goal, but they still feel comfortable there because it's like trust between you and them. And I think that became sort of like good ground to build a company, which still at the size of having more than 75, almost 80 people, probably even more today, uh, it still remains to be the main idea of the team to keep it that way. And that's why sometimes I see like people just don't leave the office even though they are done with the work and they don't have things to do with their laptops, but they still hang out in the office with the other people. And sometimes at 11 p.m. at midnight, you still see them sitting outside talking about things. And it's like sometimes 7, 10 people together talking about things. And yeah, I'm pretty, I would say that's one of the things I'm proud of with our company.
Yeah, actually, I can verify that fact because at late at nights, like there were lots of Pulsar AI people hanging out in the office. I remember, so that's pretty awesome. And like as for this handing this responsibility and ownership you mentioned to the juniors, I just remembered myself as a junior engineer, and first time my manager gave me some ownership, and I gave promise to do it, it was like amazing feeling. So I really can
Yeah.
follow in that. Uh, now I want to, like from outside observers, like story of Pulsar AI can be like, at least to me, can be divided into like three parts. Like the things you did in Georgia, then you got to USA, and then the acquisition. And now, like, I'm really interested in this first part initially. And like I was studying at the university back then, and there was this buzz created, like that Pulsar AI, Georgian AI startup, does some chatbots, and I had no idea what AI or like startup even was. But from retrospect, it seems to me that you were like a bunch of people who like started to learn and experiment a lot with this new technology and kind of gradually do some things. So can you walk me through this founding moment and all those evolution points?
Yeah, sure. Um, so way we started this company was that um, I had recently failed another company which I had started together with my friend. Um, we almost made it to raising quite substantial amount of money for that company, and on the very last day, the deal didn't work for some reason that the funding company actually had. They were having some issues, and basically that company then closed down. And yeah, they failed their own company as well, but they were pretty big by that time, and they were actually intending to invest in my previous startup. And at that same period, Zal, my co-founder, was we're actually sort of relatives to each other because his husband of my cousin. So we were pretty good friends already with this family ties that we had to each other. But of course, we didn't have too many occasions where we would interact with each other. It was mostly like family gatherings and such occasions where we would just talk about things, and those things would always basically be about technology and some new cool stuff. Uh, but during that time, Zal had also left his job at one of the Georgian tech incubators, and he was doing some freelance work, and he was sitting in the same co-working type of office where I was building the startup together with my team. Therefore, our interaction became more frequent, and as that failure happened of that company, it was very hard for me because it was I don't know, uh, probably fifth or sixth attempts for me to build a company, and it was definitely third company in tech. Uh, and as it failed, like at that time, I was thinking that, hey, like I'm already, I don't know, what was that, like 27 years old or something. And I was thinking that probably I should have started just a regular career in a company, because now it's also late. Now I would have to go for an entry level job. And so I thought I was not very competitive for a job, but I was not really feeling that way that I wanted job. So I still started to think about next startup. And it was Zal who would always talk about new things and new tech happening out there. And in one of the discussions, we discussed chatbots, and we thought that it was probably right time to try something with it. And we had a voucher of uh, it was called Veriloft. Today now it's called Terminal. Their very first location um, in Tbilisi was a small one, actually, probably like for 30 people or so. And it was me and Zal who would spend those. I think it was a 1 month voucher. So we decided that, okay, like starting September 1st, and it was like late August already, we decided that, okay, starting September 1st, we go to that office and we uh, dig into this thing and figure out what it is, and then build a demo. And that's what we did. Basically, we would go there every day, spend whole day there. We would explore things of how these chatbots work, what what are they capable of doing. And as we were exploring that technology, we were also calling some people. We were finding some people in Upwork, some people who worked in some companies. We would try to connect with them and talk to them. And at some point, then we had to move to another office because that voucher expired. So we were sitting in one of the libraries, small libraries in Tbilisi. And that was the time when we thought that, okay, probably this is something that we could do with this tech. The thing was that like it was working, but sometimes it was not working, and we would not be able to say, to actually analyze what's happening. Like we would sometimes catch some patterns why it stopped working, but it was not always the case. So we would sometimes just not know why it's not working. And there were like good days and bad days. Like some days would end uh, by working it, having it working, but some days would end without like no response from our own chatbot. So, and at that moment, we thought that probably that was the time to try it with someone, and we didn't really know anyone at TBC Bank, and we were, for some reason, from the very first day of those trials, we were thinking that one day we would go to TBC Bank to offer it to them because they already had that sort of label of being innovative and being open to new technologies. So uh, we, it seems we had that in mind that we would go there. And I knew only one person whom I wanted to call, but by I don't know what happened there. Like, was that a coincidence or what? But when I called my friend to whom I wanted to ask for her number to call her, he told me that she had asked for my number the same day because she was searching for someone for some digital product sales team or something like that. So I waited. I figured out that she would call me, and she called me for that open position that they had, and I met her on a job interview. And at the end of the interview, I told her that I was actually not interested in job, and my only goal for that meeting was to just meet her to explain what I needed from her. And uh, she took it actually well. I mean, somebody would probably get angry because of me sitting there making her talk about 1 hour of how good that position was, and then telling her that I was not interested in that at all. And I asked her that, like, hey, like this is what we do, and we would much appreciate if you could help us to schedule a meeting with someone who would be relevant for this type of technology to offer it to them and uh, find if find out if they are interested in moving forward with that thing. And that's what she actually did. I mean, we're very thankful to her. She later on became our investor in our US company as well. And so initially, she organized that meeting where we went, and I mean, we would claim knowing and doing everything that we would see they needed. I mean, we presented ourselves there as as if we were very, very good professionals in AI, and we would call ourselves a company. We told them we were 5 people, even though we were just two. So like we claimed we knew and we did so many things by that time that when they asked how many are you, like how many people are in your team, we couldn't tell them two because we told them so many things. And so we had to tell them we were five. And I remember that on every response like that, we would look at each other so that like, okay, I'm going to take it. Because pretty much none of those facts were real by that time. But the thing was the following, that we knew that, okay, if these guys agree to doing this thing, then yes, we're going to be 5 people the next day and we're going to be doing it. Because we knew that like there is nothing impossible and there is nothing that you cannot do, because we had seen some chatbots that were working already that way. So we figured out that, okay, one way or the other, we're going to make it work. So that's why we were claiming to have those things done already, even though we didn't have it at all. And yeah, that was the first thing. Then we had like a couple of rounds with GBC Bank where we would spend the whole nights before, days and nights before on YouTube to learn things about AI and then go and pitch the same things on those meetings. And we won that contract. I mean, we signed a contract with them. They gave us, today it's, I mean, it's a very little amount, but by that time we were thinking that we were telling them too much actually, and we were pretty nervous about the price, because like that, in those occasions you can easily add or remove 1 0 without any arguments there, because you don't
Yeah.
know what's going to be okay for that. So we told them this price, which was pretty cheap, and they gave us like 3 months and that contract to basically build that tech. And we really hired people in like 2 or 3 days. We were, I think, five when we started. Uh, Three engineers. One was a machine learning engineer focusing on NLP. Another one was having quite good knowledge of the AI in general, and another one was a full stack engineer. And together with them, Zal and I started to build this thing, and we built a chatbot that really made the headlines and sort of made it to the market and created some buzz for TBC Bank. And as it brought in pretty good refreshment for that label of being innovative for TBC Bank, they decided to invest more in those projects, and we got like the very next day they came to us giving us like three more projects to work on. That's actually how we started
Okay.
to build this company. And yeah, starting from that moment, it was already 2017 springtime, like March, April. That's when we decided that, okay, we should probably focus also on the other companies to get their contracts as well. That's how we scaled up and started to focus not only on chatbots, but also on some other applications of AI, including voice.
Okay. Cool. And now, like, I want to talk about this idea of exposing yourself to randomness. And I think you have a very good story about that with the Startup Grind conference, when you kind of accidentally ended up there and kind of this triggered whole process of US expansion, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can call it many things, but yeah, that was um, that was the initial initial spark that gave us the hope that, okay, we can probably make it somehow to the US as well. Uh, we went there with the help of Georgi Tukhashvili and Colin Donahue, who were chapter directors of Startup Grind from Georgia, and they offered us to join their group of startups that were traveling for that conference. And I remember when Georgi first came to us and pitched this whole thing to us, he mentioned the name of the person, whom I didn't really know who he was, but the way he mentioned him, I realized that he was probably an interesting person. And then I completely forgot that name. But when we were on the meeting, one of our uh, co-travelers and basically friends who was also traveling together with us to the conference, we were at the house that we were renting, and they actually organized Colin and Georgi organized some type of Georgian folks gathering for a dinner, and that's where um I noticed one guy who was pretty Georgian looking guy, but he was speaking a very California English, and I asked this person of like who he is, and she told me that hey, like this is George Harrison. He is like very successful entrepreneur. He has raised uh, tens of millions of dollars for his company, and so on and so on. And therefore, I realized that probably this was the guy to talk to on that event. And I remember I searched who he was, and as I was searching something about him, and I found that there was a Wikipedia article about him, so I was searching. I was actually reading that thing when he passed me, and I stopped him and I talked to him. Hey, are you this guy who is interested in this thing, and so on and so on, as if I was already knowing him and as if I was knowing a lot about him. And he was, I guess, he was pleased with that fact that there was someone who knew a lot about him, uh, and and yeah, and then I remember that I read in his bio, I read that he was interested in political science and that he was involved in some uh, consulting for the political parties and so on. And by that time, it was a recent thing that we had done a project where we built a prediction model for the election results based on social media data and user interactions for the Tbilisi mayor elections for 2017. And I thought I had something to tell him, like I had some story that would be interesting to him. So I told him that story, and he got pretty interested in like he was actually happy to find out that there was a team in Tbilisi who would do things like predicting election results through AI and building AI, conversational AI for corporations and things like that. So I was telling him this story, and he was pretty impressed by what we had done. And for the next couple days, he scheduled a couple meetings for us, like together with him and also with some other people who would basically talk to us and uh, give us some advice and recommendations of what to do and to like motivate us more. Um, and yeah, I mean, when we left the meeting, we knew that that was the guy who would, if we wanted to do something in the US, we knew that that was the right guy. And actually, when we left the meeting the next day, where he was also attending, that's what we told each other, me and Zal, that if we want to do something in the US, this is the way for us to do it. Because he offered to work on some idea that he had for his own company, which is like a side project for his company. It was not a startup idea, I would say. It was in a completely different technology field, but we said yes traditionally, as we were used to. We said yes to that project as well, and we worked hard to deliver it at a very high quality. And I guess that was a good proof to him that we were really a good team. And that's when he came to us and told us that, hey guys, like if you're seriously thinking about going to the US and building company there, I can help. I can introduce you to some people and I can give you some advice. And that's that was the bridge for us to the US. But I remember when I came back uh, from that first conference, there was some guy uh, who asked me, um, "Hey, well, like, what did you do? Was that productive?" And I told him, like, "Yeah, it was productive." And he said this thing to me, "Oh, you got some contacts," and then he laughed, like because people were thinking that everybody would tell them that coming from conference, everybody says that, hey, like we got pretty good contacts. And he was sort of like laughing at that thing that like, okay, you're also the one that got contacts, but nothing more. But I was yeah, I sort of like felt that, okay, I'm gonna prove that it's just not just a contact and we're gonna make it work together. But uh, yeah, that was like when you come back with no very tangible things, you always say that you got contacts, but actually those contacts are the tangible things for you.
Okay. And I think like a couple of weeks ago, like I was listening to your talk at one of the conferences, local conferences at Tbilisi, and you mentioned like basically like throughout this 30 minutes, you already mentioned this multiple times, like promising stuff that you don't know at that moment, but then you're figuring you were figuring things out and then delivering, right? And you were like talking about this fake it till you make it with the clients, like that approach. And the immediate question I got at the conference was that, and I also get it now, where does this confidence come from that you can make everything whatever client demands?
Um, I mean, you're not talking about very random things, like you had already given some thought to doing that thing. If there are if there are some examples that somebody has done something that why would you not be able to do it, especially if it's about tech? Because now you can build tech from your own apartment, right? And you don't need some facilities, you don't need some huge funds to actually make things work. And well, like that's one thing. But also on the other side, when there is no way back for you, probably that converts into confidence. Uh, and I think that's how the sales work also, not only in small companies, but also in some big companies, like it's not the right thing to overpromise and underdeliver, but you always try to talk about the best parts of your product, right? And you always try to convince people that this is what they need. And and when you talk about things that they need, if you can relate to that thing and if you can build some links to what you have done already, also recall some people who you think will be able to help you with this. If you know some examples, if there is some company existing already who claims to have that thing, then you're already in a pretty good situation because you have an example on the market, right? And you are not really telling people of like, hey, yes, I will bring you a, I don't know, drug for cancer or something like that.
Yeah, I
You're
get it.
talking about things that you've seen people doing, and there is no reason why you cannot do it. And uh, actually, that is the good part of B2B as well, the B2B sector, because that's where you can pretty much endlessly talk to your customer as long as you're building what they want. And they are actually your product, I would not say managers, but product owners at that moment because they are telling you what they need and what the product should look like. And I mean, if you know that it's about technology and if you know that there are examples out there, you basically know that you can also do it, even though you haven't done it. But I mean, I wouldn't really say it's completely fake. It's just you
Yeah.
just tell them that yes, I have it, but you know that they're gonna ask for it in 2 days. And if you know that you can build it in 2 days, then why not say that you have it already and use those 2 days to actually build it instead of telling them no, because there are many people who are telling them no to their problems and they just move to another. And if you tell them that, yeah, I do have it, and you have just 2 days, it's a tight deadline sometimes, but if you can use those 2 days to actually make your words right that you have it, then why not say today? That's the whole point there.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of this clients, just to continue with that, so uh, how annoying can you be when interacting with clients and when trying to kind of get your first client, for example? Are there any like red lines that startup founder can't cross?
I mean, there are red lines and everything, I guess, but
Yeah, I mean some rational red lines for sure.
well, as long as you really offer something, uh, if you really think that it can be useful for them, then I don't think you can do anything wrong by even over communicating that or over offering that and pushing too much to actually try it. Uh, because that's the only way to get some first customers. I mean, not for every product. I mean, there are products that solve uh, some amazing tech that solve problems at a very first glance, and you realize that yes, this is going to solve that thing for me. But you need that attention from a customer that can be spent on analyzing whether your product is useful or not, and whether your service is something that they would use. And sometimes it may become too annoying, especially if being uh, they're being pushed by many and not only you about a specific product. But I don't think that as long as you're really offering something, what you do is annoying. I mean, if they tell you no, if they tell you no and that's it, then probably there is not much you can do immediately. You can change something and go back. But if they tell you no and they tell you reason for that no, then it's actually a customer feedback. And you can go and build that different thing, which basically eliminates that no argument, and you're on the next stage of offering next version of the product. And as long as they tell you no, and that reason is the real reason why they tell you no, you are actually in a very good place because that no is something that tells you what's next for your product. And but there are cases where they tell you no, and the reason behind it, they just make it up to just make it easy for them to end the conversation. I remember we had one case where the reason why it was the very first cancel of our product when we already had customers in the US. And I was very nervous, I remember that day. And I asked this customer like why they were canceling. And she told me some reason. And I took that reason as a real reason for that thing. And in about like it would take us some time uh, to actually turn off the product for them. And we organized another call where we just asked her again the reason. And she told us something completely different. She didn't even remember what she had told me before on our very first call about the cancellation. And I realized that the feedback that she gave us was not valuable, not on the first call nor on the second one, because she was just making up some reasons because there was probably some other thing happening there that she didn't want to disclose or didn't really want to think about, and she was just throwing some words at us. Um, and those types of no's are very bad. I mean, they don't give you any hint what direction to take. But when a customer tells you no and there is a reason, which is a real reason why they are telling you no, and that reason relates to the product itself, then you're basically in a very good place because that customer is helping you build the product.
Okay, and now you mentioned like talking with customers, right, and getting feedback. So I would assume like with some B2C startups, like people do some user interviews, they get some bunch of people around, just talk to them. But like how did you do those kind of things with companies? Like did you get there and talk to them about their problems, or you just assumed that they had some problem and then talk to them as customers?
Um, uh, well, I had almost no contacts of our potential customers. I knew who were they, but I just knew who were they, and that's it. I didn't have any ties with any people who would help me connect with them. But it was just one guy whom I whom I had met. He was working at a dealership, and I felt like that was my chance to use that contact to actually get a hold of those people at that dealership and pitch our product. Um, and I got no from him. I got no from his team for a couple times. Uh, and in that case, I was pitching it to them. I was actually pushing them. I was pretty close to those red lines actually that you mentioned. Uh, but in other cases, I was trying to get intro to those people who were working at different dealerships, and uh, I was scheduling calls. Some of them would actually join. Some of them would not even join those calls. And I was trying to impress them by the AI, and that was not the right thing. Uh, because when you,
You mean the car dealerships, right?
yeah, the car dealerships in the US, the the idea is that by that time, AI was still new. I mean, nobody is very surprised today if the AI really answers to your question. But that was the case by that time, that people would get impressed if the AI would actually answer their question. So the way we were pitching it to them was that we would somehow schedule a call with them, and then I would open my uh, mm, I would start screen sharing. I would open the conversation and I would ask this person then, like, hey, like, just ask me whatever you want, and I'll ask this AI. And they would ask me too many questions, and I would ask it to the AI, and it would return the response. And actually, those responses were, in most of the cases, coming from our team instead of AI. And and they would always be impressed because, yeah, AI is answering. But that would not be sufficient for them to relate that technology to their own business and to their own problems and to their own business processes. Uh, it took us some time to realize that the actual approach of demoing was not working, and we switched to a different mode of demoing, which is still being used even today, and it's very successful. The idea was that we would show other dealerships' dashboard and how it was working for them. So we would not impress them by like ask me whatever you want and I'll ask to our AI. Rather than that, it was set of conversations that had happened already, and we were just reading those conversations and like, hey, this is what the AI answered, this is what they asked, this is how it answered, and this is how it scheduled the appointment in the end. And we would show them like 10 examples of those, and then we would show them the numbers of performance of the sales of this dealership, and we would try to pick a dealer. Sometimes it would not be a real account. It would just be some fake account with some real collection of real conversations that we had, but it was not actually of that dealerships, right? But we were just trying to have a dealership on the demo which was pretty similar to their size and to their operations, so that I think there is this approach of sales where you make your potential customer, you make them feel bad for not using your product. And that was the case that we were using, like we were showing them how good operations are in this neighbor dealership of yours compared to you, and they are using our AI, and that's how they achieve it. And that would actually make them realize that, okay, so this is how they fit this AI into their process, and I have the same type of processes, so I can also make it work. Even though it was the same technology, same solution, same price, same everything, that was that was the approach which would help them realize how this could be helpful to them. So by that time, what we would do, it would be somehow to get a hold of a customer to schedule a call. We were calling them, we were emailing them, and we were getting some demos scheduled. And then we were demoing to them in the new way, and that's when we started to close customers.
Yeah, and like a couple of days ago, I just came across this joke on Twitter. Like, if you're a non-technical startup founder, like, and obviously like tech startup founder, you'd better become good at tech or just become very good at sales. So, what is your like primary role as a CEO of a tech startup?
Well, I would say it was more sales slash product, because we had a great team in Tbilisi who would execute on any needs of the product one way or the other, either operationally or technically. We would support the product, but mm, uh, but on that business end, what we needed was to figure out what the product should really be and to have more customers. And that's where I was. I was living in San Francisco by that time, and uh, that that was the place where those two things needed to be worked at. So I was focusing on somehow getting this in front of more customers. And as I was doing that thing, I was also collecting feedback from them, and that feedback would then go to Tbilisi team who would build solutions around those feedback and feedback points, and then uh, we would have newer versions of the product that we would continue to pitch to other customers. So I would say that um, I would say that I was more on the sales side, with pretty strong ties to the product and to the product design, let's say so. Uh, but in general, I agree that startups do have a style, and that style is either being very good at product or being very good at sales. When it happens that there are both, those companies have pretty high chances of becoming unicorns. But it's not in many cases that there is a team who can do both very well. Uh, you either focus more on the product and that becomes your main uh, advantage, or you focus on sales in the beginning and you become pretty good at that. Uh, but as you raise, like, let's say Series A round, then you have enough money to buy the other skill that you don't have. But in the beginning, I think it's still good to have either one or the other, because with one or the other, you can still make it to Series A somehow, and and then do the scale up work. It's not easy, and it's easier when you are pretty good at sales because you are selling upfront and then you're building it, just like fake till you make it thing. But it also depends on the technology and on how new are the things that you're building. Sometimes you're just copying someone, right? And just changing either business model or changing the vertical or something where you don't have much to do on the product discovery end and you just have to focus on sales.
Okay, got it. Uh, I really want to lean towards like the co-founder stuff right now and relationship among co-founders in context of decision making. I'm really curious, like, what were the decisions and situations you had to consult and discuss with your co-founders, and what were the decisions you were making alone? I mean, or even were there even such situations at all?
Uh, I mean, we would we were both open to discussing anything in the beginning, but then later on we were more than two. But in all of the cases, we were all pretty open to discussing any topics. Like we were not that, hey, like this is my job and I'm gonna decide it or something like that. We were all okay to discuss any decisions, and we were actually feeling more comfortable if the others were also uh, getting involved in decision making and were also taking some loads on them as well. Uh, uh, but uh, but at the same time, from the very beginning, we would recognize each other's skills, uh, and we would we would trust each other on those aspects. Like I would always trust whatever they were doing, whatever the team was doing on the tech part, and my co-founders would always uh, trust whatever I was doing on the business side. Even though we were discussing both things, we were making decisions there, it was still okay if I wanted to make some decision on my own, or if, let's say, Zal wanted to make decision on his own. We would always be completely okay. We would never even discuss why you decided this or that. Uh, like when there is a team of co-founders, of course, somewhere in the world there is a better CEO, there is a better CTO, there is a better chief operations officer, or anyone that you have on the team, but that's who you have on the team. And that's the team that you should be able to achieve your maximum. You should not think about that, like, hey, like someone would make better decision in someone's place. That's what you have, and that's the resource, and you should be uh, you should be focusing on the goals with that team that you have, because that's who you start with, and you should get to the end together with them. Uh, Therefore, we were not really disputing any matters around decision making. We were always open. We were actually trying to get each other involved in all the decisions, but at the same time, it was completely okay to make one or the other decision on your own. But at some point, when we started to become bigger and bigger, uh, we said that okay, like deciding everything together doesn't work just because of matter of time, because it takes a lot of time to make every decision by five people or four people or three or even two sometimes, right? So that's when we found out that okay, like so far you've been making most of the decisions in this area, and I've been making most of the decisions in that area, and some others were deciding in their own area of expertise, and we've been getting each other involved, but like from now on, we can continue on our own because we've seen that most of the business decisions are coming from you, most of the tech decisions are coming from you, and we can continue that way. If we are needed, everyone should be available for the decision making and helping each other. But if not, that's not a big deal. You can make it on your own. And again, trust was the critical part of that thing as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing. Let me get to the final question of our conversation. I mean, let's say you're building a new startup now. Just imagine that. I think it will be hard to imagine, but just imagine. And what's like one thing from your previous experience, like which you will do exactly same, and one thing which you will do completely differently this time?
Um, I would I would try to be I would try to be surrounded by the same vibe which I was in during that time. I was living in San Francisco. Uh, there are many disadvantages of living there, and there are there are quite many reasons why I would not live probably there. But while we talk about startups and tech, probably that's still the best place to have strong ties with. Uh, I'm not saying that everybody should move there, but what I'm saying is that you should have some presence there as well, because you look around and you see people who believe in some crazy ideas, and that motivates you more and more to think about big things, to think about big problems and big solutions for those. And at the same time, once you come up with that thing, then there are people who are searching for people like you who came up with a solution to a problem, to help you in fundraising, to help you in building teams, to help you in go-to-market strategy, and to actually execute on all those things. And therefore, I would probably still try to be having strong ties to a place like that, depending on which market you're focusing on, of course. But if you are trying to build a company that one day becomes global, then probably that's the best place to start it. But at the same time, uh, from Georgia, we do have some advantages. Like, people are very smart here. It's easy to hire people. It's cheaper for us to live in Georgia compared to California, and therefore, uh, you can go on a very tight budget but still build amazing things, be very fast on that thing, and I mean, everybody should also consider using that as a big advantage. So you should keep an office in Georgia. You should try to have your research and development office in here, because you have everything to be very good at that from here. But again, to have to feel the pulsation of the industry, of the vertical, of the business, and of everything. And if you're focusing on big market like US, you should have a very strong connection to that thing, uh, based on the location. I mean, it might not sound very smart to say today that geography matters, but it does, even
Yeah.
in case of a tech company, because again, uh, your daily life is probably the biggest source of motivation. And if you are in a place where daily problems are the ones that give you some ideas for your next company or for your first company, then uh, then those problems have potential of being very big. I mean, the problem that you come up with uh, on a big market can be a problem for tens of millions of people, and therefore, if you build a solution for that, there's a scale for you to grow. While you do that same thing in a smaller population, then that problem might only be relevant for that population, and therefore there is no scale to grow. You're doing things right in both cases, but there's just no scale. Therefore, that's probably one of the main things that I still consider to be a very critical one.
Okay. And what about the thing you would do differently? Is there anything like that?
The thing I would do differently, I mean, I will still try to build a team of people with. I mean, I would try hard to make sure that the company still has that friendly environment that Pulsar had and has. But as I said, it happened on its own, and now I'll try to make it sure that that really
Oh, okay.
happens next time
Awesome.
as well, because that's the only that's the only environment where I can work, and I think that's also the environment where every success becomes 10 times better, and every problem is 10 times easier because you're with your friends.
Okay. Got it. And just for the final thing, I think, like I mentioned, this conference, we listened to your kind of experience story and talk at Tbilisi a couple of weeks ago, and my friend and I were kind of surprised how interesting and engaging your talk was. And then we kind of both agreed that there is some common trait with these interesting people, and I think like in Georgian it's called like ushualo person. It's a combination of like honest,
Mhm.
humble, and simple guy. And I think you are exactly that kind of a person. And I just yet again had a blast listening to you. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best
Thank you so
everywhere.
much for the kind words. Yeah, and I appreciate uh, your interest in my story and what we've built. And yeah, I hope we'll have more and more things to share with each other. Good luck to your podcast. It's pretty amazing what he created. The content really helps the uh, community to share things with each other, to listen to some interesting stories, to make their own conclusions, to get more motivated, and to move forward with bigger ideas. So I think you're doing a great job with what you create. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you.